Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death are the last two episodes of Doctor Who Season 1, and I think it's an understatement to say it was a controversial finale. But how does this hold up to previous finales we've had in New Who, and what caused it to be this way? So to start off with, you would want to compare it to Rusty Davies' previous finales, but I don't think you really can. It's so different to them. When you look at the two-parters, they're very much one story split into two. In Series 1 it's that way, in Series 2 it's that way, Series 4. Series 3 on the other hand is probably closer to what we got in this, but for the most part, this story is split in a way unlike the other Rusty Davies stories. It's actually more split like Stephen Moffat's stories. Both episodes can almost stand on their own. When you look at Stephen Moffat's finales, for example, Series 5, it's very much two stories you could treat individually. Really, there isn't a through line from the start of episode 1 to episode 2. It's very much the first episode is the mystery of the Pandora's box, and in the second episode, you don't even really get a resolution. That is solved. You're on to solving why the TARDIS blows up the whole universe, and then how to save the Doctor from a time where he's been written out. They're very much separate. Also, take Series 9, for example, with Hellbent and Heaven Sent. They are pretty much two individual stories. They fit together, you know they happen sequentially, but they don't feel like one necessarily. You can even say that about Series 10, whereas Rusty Davies tend to not do that. They're normally instantly after the episode ends, and I feel like that is what this two-parter is. Yes, it technically does start exactly where it ends, but that's only for the intro. There is a time gap in there, and for the most part, it's nothing like the first part. I don't think anybody was expecting it to go this way, having watched Legend of Ruby Sunday. And so, for me, this is almost more an attempt at a Moffat-style finale. For the fans, I don't think that works. Because whilst you could argue he has done a worse job than Moffat at this style of story, I think the issue comes when everybody's expecting a Rusty Davies finale, and they get a Stephen Moffat-style one. I feel like most people have a real preference on which showrunner they prefer their finales for. And I feel like that's also a cause for why people dislike this two-parter. It does have those Rusty Davies elements in there of being very character-focused, and even the story itself is very centered around just Ruby herself. You get the 15 minutes at the end to go into that. But if you look at the story, for the most part, it feels a lot more like a Moffat episode. And the story on its own is amazing. I think there's just one part of this story that is like the nail in the coffin for this episode, and it's the reveal of Ruby's mother. There are people that like it and have no issues with the plot holes it leaves, but I'm kind of someone who's in the middle. If you see my review of Empire of Death, you'll know this, but I feel like the reveal works on an emotional level, and it's a good message to the audience, but the amount of plot holes it leaves is jarring. Like, there's so many questions that we have no answers for, and we probably won't ever get them. And so this finale, had it not had this reveal be part of it, I think would have been way higher up in people's estimations for this episode. I feel like this reveal kind of made or broke the episode. If you didn't like the reveal, this episode is going to be tanked for you. If you love the reveal, I feel like this episode is going to be amazing for you. And I feel like that is what has actually caused this divide in opinion. Because the episode, for the most part, I don't think there's anything offensive in there. The misuse of Sutek, people argue, but for someone who doesn't know who that is, this episode was really fun and it worked all around. I just feel like a lot of people left the episode feeling sour at the reveal of who Ruby's mother is, and I actually feel like that's the main issue with this episode. The only other issue I think this episode has, which makes people not see it as a good finale, is it not being epic enough. That might be too drastic a word for some people, but this finale had such a great setup with Legend of Ruby Sunday. The stakes were high, excitement was there for the next episode, and in the next episode was so slow moving, and despite having some of the biggest stakes we've had in the show for the finale, the episode's pacing didn't make it feel like those stakes were big. The episode moved very slowly, we weren't in many different locations, and then it was just solved in one scene. You almost got to the resolution without any extra build-up. So you're left on this cliffhanger from Legend of Ruby Sunday, and for the most part, you're just then seeing the resolution. There isn't much gap between those two things, really. There's a lot of time spent in each scene, which just adds to the runtime, but it doesn't feel like it builds. And so for a final episode of your season 1, for it to not feel epic or grand, I think that's the misstep. If you took this as just a two-parter in the middle of a season, I feel people would enjoy this a lot more, but for a finale of a season 1, and when you've only got 8 episodes, it just doesn't energize you, this episode. And so finale wise, it did take a misstep there. When you combine this lack of an epic feeling, a reveal that doesn't answer people's questions, and you throw in a different style of writing that everybody's used to, I think that is where you get the controversy, because there will be people that do like these new elements, and at the same time it's too drastic a change for other people, and that might not have been the best move for a season 1. As much as it was a complaint that Rusty Davies was just going to tread tread old ground when he came back to the show. I honestly feel like that's what you wanted for season 1. I feel like the finale almost needed to be more basic and more generic of a finale, just for the first season, to get those new fans in, to bring back people, and to build that excitement for season 2. Having a finale that tries new things, whilst I think is a good idea normally, when you're trying to do a soft relaunch of the show, I don't think that's what you want to do. Unfortunately, that is all I have for you today. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts on this 2-part finale and want to share them, drop some comments down below. I'd be interested to see what you actually thought of these 2 episodes. And with that said, thank you for watching. Goodbye.